creating a space where a group of you will come together and you are leading a conversation that is going to result in people getting clarity, accountability, but also a space to ideate. Because for the more upmarket masterminds, that's really what you're paying for. There aren't many places where we can really think very safely because, well, your family or your loved ones or your business partners, they are maybe not the people you should be discussing this stuff with, but a group of peers really can be. So start small, 3 months with a very specific outcome, something that they are going to definitely hit. For that, I suggest you charge something like $500 a month per person. So that's $1,500. Give them a super early bird of under $1,000 and aim to have 4 people in there. So you'll get $4,000 for it. Now, if this sounds like, but I couldn't possibly charge that little, charge more. I've had people finish my training and then immediately go out and sell a $20,000 mastermind. It really is entirely up to you. So my closing process is really about reminding people how far we've come. I used to not do this, and I would get maybe 20 or 30% of people would renew. Now I have this process that reminds people, remember those 10 things you were going to do? Well, you did 8 of them. Isn't that great? And now I would say 60 to 70% retention, sometimes more. It depends on the group.
If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, Digital Trailblazers. I'm excited to have with us today Liz Scully. She has a very interesting background. She's won an Emmy. Her work has been nominated for Oscars and all kinds of very interesting things. Now, in our world, she's doing some very cool stuff with masterminds. I'm sure you've heard of amazing masterminds. Maybe you have your own masterminds. You're a member of a mastermind, but you've also probably heard of some not so amazing masterminds that didn't go so well. Liz has helped to create amazing, very, very high ticket mastermind, like $100,000 ticket masterminds, and has helped a lot of people. So we're going to dive into all the details of how to really rock the mastermind space, what they are, what they're not, what you need to really make sure is included, and how to make sure that what you're putting out there in the marketplace has people happy, excited, and interested and ready to come back. So welcome, Liz. We are super excited to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So how did you get into this whole mastermind space? I mean, because, well, like the Emmy and Oscar stuff, that's kind of like little dissonance there. What's going on?
It sounds really different, but it kind of isn't. So in the film industry, we are dealing with big budgets and major problems going wrong all the time. And you're not judged by how things go wrong. You're judged by how you deal with it. So dealing with problems all the time, dealing with big budgets, dealing with very driven people, that sounds like entrepreneurs, right? It's very similar. Plus, we are very collaborative. We work together. If you're very lucky in the film industry, you work with the best in the business, again, just like entrepreneurs. So although it sounds like a huge shift, it's actually very similar, very collaborative, very exciting, slightly scary some of the time.
That's awesome. So what are you doing today in the whole mastermind space?
Well, I'm a business strategist. I help people grow their business. And the way I work with clients is almost entirely within masterminds. And I've done that for about a decade. And for a long time, I've been training people how to run masterminds because, as you said, often masterminds need training. It's not hard to do. It's just a different skill. And most people don't have that skill. So I have been training people in it. It's lovely work.
Oh, that's awesome. So who is at the place where they should be looking at creating a mastermind? Let's start with that.
Well, assuming you have some clients and you help people make decisions in your business, which is most of us, right? So if you have a service-based business or you have some kind of consultancy, you're used to helping people make those decisions, then a mastermind could be a really good fit for you because it's about exactly that, creating a space where a group of you will come together and you are leading a conversation that is going to result in people getting clarity, accountability, but also a space to ideate. Because for the more upmarket masterminds, that's really what you're paying for. There aren't many places where we can really think very safely because, well, your family or your loved ones or your business partners, they are maybe not the people you should be discussing this stuff with, but a group of peers really can be.
So this sounds different from a lot of the masterminds that I've been pitched on, because typically when I hear, an offer to join a mastermind, it's something where I've already maybe bought a program from somebody else or a high ticket program, and now this is like the next level up, and I'm still kind of like a student in this place, but it's, I'm paying a much higher price for maybe a higher level of access. So I think there's a lot of different definitions of what exactly a mastermind is. Can you maybe go over what maybe is an accurate description of a real mastermind versus something where it's just another program that you're joining?
Absolutely. So for me, a mastermind is a group that meets regularly, whether that's once a year or every other week. It's the regular meeting over time. And in the session, you can ask questions, you can sit in the hot seat, you can get feedback from peers, and then you make a commitment that you will achieve something for the next time. So it has some element of questioning, some element of accountability, and it has longevity. Now, you can add a mastermind, as you say, to a course. And in that situation, the course is where you learn the how to, and the mastermind is where you deal with the emotional, how am I going to do this? How am I going to fit it into my business? How does that work? And that feeling of this is a place where we can deal with the bigger emotions around a mastermind, not in a scary kind of, I'm going to be weeping into a pillow variety, but just there are so many, it's like running a business is hard and a mastermind is a place to deal with that stuff.
Okay. So the type of mastermind you're talking about is not necessarily students, but peers, people who are not necessarily in your program, but other people who are kind of on the same path as you are and maybe in the same spot?
Yes, yes. Although with a caveat that you can run it around a course. And if you do have a course and a mastermind, the completion rate on the course is about 80%, which, as we know, if you've ever created a course, it is heartbreaking how few people finish it. With a mastermind, people will eventually, you can send them back to do stuff, but they will do it spontaneously. They will say, should we all just get together and do that module that we all got stuck on? Which, apart from anything, is very helpful for you as the course creator to find out, oh, so it's module 5's the problem, eh? That can be really helpful.
Gotcha. So who are the types of people that you would pull into this? If they're not necessarily going to be your students, who would you pull into this mastermind?
So they are likely to be the sort of people that have graduated from your one-to-one consultancy. Because in one-to-one, you can be incredibly vulnerable. You can talk about figures, you can talk about stuff that potentially you wouldn't want lots of people to know. Once you have dealt with those bigger things that need untangling, then a mastermind is a great place to be looking at the bigger picture, the sort of questions that now I've untangled things, this is a place where I want to get 5 or 6 ideas on this. So having the 360 of a group is really helpful. Some people do go straight into a mastermind, but I think for a lot of people, it kind of feels safer to go one-to-one. And now, okay, now I'm on a solid footing. Now it's time for that group.
Okay. Now you are also mentioning about creating a mastermind of your peers, not necessarily your students. Is that a different type of thing that you would do?
It's the same, really. For me, I build peer-based masterminds, so they're not my peers so much as they're a group of clients moving in the same area. But you can build them for yourself. Obviously, you can run your own masterminds, like just for your own good. I have done that as well.
When I hear what you're talking about with having, people graduating from one-to-one coaching, it almost seems like get your foundation laid, get your stuff taken care of, And now you've kind of graduated into the higher level discussions, the brainstorming, the collaborations, all of those other elements, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, whether that's a one-on-one or if you've got a really good group program that helps people lay those foundations. But I agree. Like we currently don't have that type of mastermind or a mastermind. But in my mind, when we've thought of it, it's always that next level. It's people who've gone through the group program, they have the foundation. So we're not talking foundation stuff. We're talking people who've got their stuff together. They're creating some level of success. They're not beginners, and now they're ready to how to tweak this and grow and expand beyond that.
Exactly.
Awesome. So what are some of the key elements? So like walk us through the structure, or if someone's looking to create a mastermind, tell us what that should really look like.
So there are two types that I teach regularly. So the sort I run myself on the regular are online masterminds where we meet every other week for a year. Obviously, there are a few gaps in there so people can go on vacation, but they're a long period. And we set a goal at the beginning, we build a strategy through the year, people work towards that, and people re-up each year, time on time again, which has the delight that you're not looking for extra clients, you've got longevity, the group is nice and stable. And people, of course, renew because they see results. That's the key. And you have enough time to do that. I think we've all been through that thing where you build a strategy and there just isn't time to complete it before working with a coach is finished. So this way, you can build that lovely longevity, but also the people around you, the peer group in that mastermind, they know each other well enough to be able to gently call each other out on stuff. You said this was going to be the year of marketing, and here you are hiring people. This seems not quite the right plan. That's the moment where a mastermind really comes into its own, really seeing the people in it.
The question that came up for me as you were talking through that is how much in the perfect mastermind, right? How much is like leader led or driven versus member to member or peer driven?
Ooh, great question. So it's kind of a bit of both. So the leader, the big thing that the leader does before you start is all the curation, because that's the key to masterminding. Who's in the group, and more importantly, who isn't in the group. We haven't got pushy people. Everything's fine. They're well balanced as a group. And that group together will be guided by the mastermind coach. There's a certain element of facilitation. I help people set their strategy because I'm a strategist. That's what I do at the beginning. In the session itself, though, as the host, I speak last. So the person in the hot seat asks their question, then the rest of the group gives their thoughts, and I speak last. And this is something that makes such a difference, because for the beginner mastermind coach, that feeling of, I have to have the answers to everything, can be a bit overwhelming. But by speaking last, even if you have nothing to say, which obviously you will have, but just in case you don't, you can say, and obviously this group is fantastic. Look what they have said. They've said all these amazing things. You can sort of big up each section of it. And so the group itself sort of builds its own momentum because they know each other. And I think that's the key. Some of the best coaching I have ever seen is from non-professional coaches within a mastermind, from one person to another, because they know each other's businesses well enough. Over time, you begin to really learn that.
What's kind of the minimum number of people that you would need in a mastermind to really make it effective?
So in the small group masterminds I run, the online ones I was talking about, they are 4 or 6 people plus the coach. So they're tiny, but they are stable. And I think that's part of it. I have certainly run online masterminds that are much bigger. And in person, you can certainly run larger groups. But that little group that is tight means that everybody gets to ask a question every time. Everyone gets input on each round. So you don't end up with, I think we've all been in masterminds where one person speaks just a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen.
Gotcha. Okay. And so if you're meeting, say, bi-weekly, how long are these meetings?
So I favor 2 hours, which seems like a lot, but that's only 4 hours a month. And frankly, if you haven't got 4 hours a month for your business, maybe there's other issues going on in your business.
Right. If you're putting this mastermind together from people who've graduated like one-on-one coaching or group coaching, roughly how big of a program would you need, or how many clients would you need in order to create a mastermind like that? Like, would you need like 20 or 30 in order to get a group of 4 to 6?
That's a good question. So If they're warm leads, I regularly fill a mastermind of 4 people from a list of 10. But then this is what I do. I bang on about masterminds all the time. I think with 20 people who are warm, who have presumably enjoyed the program that they've just done and got results, and the price is right, because as we know, some people, they finish a course and they just want to go and I'd like to go and do the thing now. I'm not ready for the next thing. But if you've got 20 students who are happy, then yes, you should be able to build a mastermind for 4 people for sure. Certainly 6 might be a little bit of a stretch, but 20 or 30, you should definitely be able to fill 1, if not 2 masterminds.
So for that type of model, okay, 4 to 6 people, small group, meeting online every other week, couple hours a session. What does like the agenda of the meeting look like? Well, let's start with that question.
So the standard meeting, you have a little bit of the host, in this case, in my mastermind, obviously that's me. You have a little bit of chit chat at the beginning where you share something about your business. And this is super important. The thing I see from brand new mastermind coaches all the time is they don't really add their personality in. But of course, the people in that group have paid to hang out with you. They want to see backstage with you. What are you testing? What are you trying? What's going on? The things, picture you're always fascinating. What isn't working right now? I thought I would try this and I'm not going to do that anymore. Here's why. So I spend sort of 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of each session just sharing that. And then if it's 4 people in the group, we have, roughly speaking, half an hour each. Obviously, that depends how much I have spoken, how much they are speaking, but the last person gets slightly less, the first person gets slightly more. So I rotate them through. And in their half-hour session, they get to give us a tiny little catch-up and then go straight to their ask. And I deliberately call it an ask, not a question, so it feels a bit fancy, a little bit special. And that ask is hopefully something they have thought about beforehand, because it is painful watching someone think of what to ask. So hopefully they've come with an idea, and it might be, if it's a business mastermind, as most of mine are, it might be something about their marketing. I'm trying this new thing. What do you think? So it could be an ideation question, or it could be an accountability question. And those questions, they in the hot seat, they are there to absorb rather than broadcast. So they go quiet and the group suggests thoughts. And I go round quite formally asking people what they think. And then we have a little discussion. I go last, as mentioned, and then eventually we squeeze a goal out of it, whatever it is we talked about, that they will achieve by the next time we meet. And then we go through the group, little wrap up at the end. That's a very simple 2-hour structure. And it sounds so basic, but it is so powerful. If there are 6 people, we just do 3 people with hot seats, 3 people who give a catch up, and then we swap it over next time we meet.
Gotcha. Yeah, so for someone who's never launched one of these, never done this, they are excited about this process now. Walk us through the pricing structure. How should we set this price and what makes sense?
Sure. Well, obviously this is a how long is a piece of string concept, but what I suggest for brand new people, if you've never done one before, is to think of it as, start with a 3-month mastermind. Let's not, don't go straight into a year. I personally launched 3 that were 6 months long. Very first time I did it, terrible idea. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was stuck with whatever it was I'd created. So start small, 3 months with a very specific outcome, something that they are going to definitely hit. For that, I suggest you charge something like $500 a month per person. So that's $1,500. Give them a super early bird of under $1,000 and aim to have 4 people in there. So you'll get $4,000 for it. Now, if this sounds like, but I couldn't possibly charge that little, charge more. I've had people finish my training and then immediately go out and sell a $20,000 mastermind. It really is entirely up to you. But with that structure of $500 a month, most people feel safe. They're not overselling it. And it is, most of us could afford, hopefully if you're running a business, most of us can afford those kinds of prices. And then once you have your feet under you and you feel confident, then you can charge more next time.
Okay. So you said you ran a couple different models. So we kind of, I think, walked through all the ins and outs in my mind for this specific model online, 4 to 6 people. Walk us through some of what those other models look like.
Sure. So The fancier model, the more upmarket version, is in person, where you can have 10 people, 20 people meet in person for a weekend. The sort of place where you arrive on a Thursday night and you leave on a Sunday lunchtime. And in that time, you do in-person masterminding. Hopefully you're somewhere delightful. There's a nice space where you're all together. And in that time, that concentrated feeling, you are giving people a tiny bit of training on the first day. That's it, maybe an hour just to set the scene. And then the value for the clients are the other participants, as always with the mastermind, but also they're seeing that pressure cooker of all of the big results that might take 6 months to get with an hour's worth of masterminding per person. That is it's like 3 years of psychotherapy. It is very intense. And part of the delight is not just being in the hot seat, but seeing that happen. That's where a lot of the ahas come from. And that kind of weekend, if you can set it up so that your structure is you are guaranteeing people a result. So that instead of spending 6 months writing your book outline, together we are going to workshop it together this weekend. And at the end of the weekend, you're going to have this thing, or you're going to have your marketing plan, you're going to have your video structure, whatever it is, at that feeling of this very intense weekend where we come together, we're going to get something really good out of it. Those are much more high value. And obviously at that kind of weekend can be 10 or 20 grand. And for the really high end people, it's easier for them to carve out a long weekend than what you want me on Zoom every other week for a year? That'd be ridiculous. That would be silly.
I could see that. Yes. Okay, cool. So, and forgive me if you mentioned this, but how many people is optimal in sort of those live mastermind settings?
So you can do up to 20. I would say for the first time you do it, 10. And the nice thing is you don't need a big support staff. You need you as the fabulous coach and then an assistant coach around you. Because when people sort of come off think of it as a stage, when they come off having their hot seat, they need someone to kind of collapse into their arms because it can be quite intense. And even if it isn't big and emotional, they have done a lot of thinking in a very short time. So it's good to have someone else to listen to. If you two were running it, perfect. There's the person doing the hot seat and the person doing the catching afterwards. And then it's nice to have obviously wonderful food. The weird thing about masterminds, and this is kind of true of retreats, but particularly masterminds, in person, people eat like there is no tomorrow. It's like they're feeding their brains. So if you are catering it, cater 1.5 amount of food per person. Oh yeah, they eat like there's no tomorrow. It's amazing.
That is really interesting. I love it. Do you prefer like regional or local or US or wherever kind of based events, or sort of the tropical getaway sort of scenarios?
I have to say, I'm a luxury girl. I like to be in a beautiful villa somewhere by the sea, but it really depends on your clientele. If they are going to be unable to make time for a long journey before the weekend. But one of the lovely things you can do is, so you've had your amazing transformational weekend that is 10 or 20 grand. Say you do it for 10 grand and you tell everyone the lovely thing, this would normally be full price, but this is the first one we're doing. But you can string it together into a year's worth of program by saying, we're going to do this 3 times this year. And one of those could be at the tropical place. One of them could be somewhere that is right next to an airport, just because it's somewhere like Atlanta where everybody can get to it. And then one other wherever you personally fancy it. And those 3 things together, that could be a 60 grand program, because the value that people are getting and the value increases exponentially each time because the group knows each other. They trust each other more. But you have to have super clear outcomes, because if people are going to lay out that kind of money, they have to get results, obviously.
If you do it like that, where you could have 3 different events throughout the year, do you also allow people to participate through Zoom if they can't attend live on one or 2 of the events?
I know I should say yes. Have you ever been in a meeting where there's one person on Zoom and everyone else is in the room? It's horrible. Unless you're in somewhere where there are amazing video suites and they're life size on the wall. But even then, their doorbell goes and they go and get a pizza, and the rest of you, they're sitting there in a bath towel. I mean, I've never worked out how to do it well. And a big part of being in person are the little interstitial moments, the moments where you're eating together. And with a lot of these big programs, the real value is the thinking time. And that the person on the Zoom is going to feel left out from that. And also they're just going to have to be there all day. So it hurts me, but no, you've got to be there.
Yeah. So yeah, walk me through that agenda again, thinking about like breaks. Cause I know when I'm at a great event like that, it is the break time, right? Like there's good nuggets, but then it's the conversation and the digestion part that happens afterwards where it's really where the magic happens, right?
Sure. So if they arrive Thursday night, let's say there's 10 people, they arrive Thursday night, you do something together as a group. One of my clients calls it, we grunt like men at the bar. You know, that feeling of everyone's together with a glass of something lovely. And again, this is part of, they have paid to see behind the scenes in your world. Part of what they're paying for is, forgive me, grunting at the bar together. That feeling. The next morning, and this is again weirdly effective, it's advisable to have some kind of sport, whether it's a yoga or a thing or a run, something like that. So the group together before they have done anything else can do that. But you also want to make sure that for people who can't or don't want to do that, so a very extended breakfast. And some people will come back from their run, some people will come back from their yoga. And like you said, that is important. From say 7 till 9, there is this ridiculously long and, as mentioned, large breakfast for people. And then from 9 till 12, you have a little tiny bit of teaching and you start the hot seats, then a 2-hour lunch, and then a long, maybe 3-hour section of masterminding, little break and more of it. So you could do probably 5 or 6 hot seats during that time. And the key is to have a lot of time where people can sit and think, and more snacks than you know what to do with. Because I don't keep going on to this, but people whine about the food and they need thinking time. So a lovely space that they can go to and think is great. But most people will hang about together, nibbling snacks and eating. And as you say, talking about what's just happened. So even if you just have 5 or 6 hours of masterminding, that's pretty intense. But if you spread it through the whole day and you want a long, leisurely dinner for exactly what you're talking about, it's those little moments where you can move around and then you kind of do the same thing again the next day. That's it. And then everyone leaves the day after. And in that time, you as the coach, you are helping people with transformations, but they're kind of doing it themselves as they move about through the group.
I love this. This actually has me really excited because in my mind, I've thought of a lot about hosting something like this, but the ones that I've been in had more training. There was no hot seat situation. It wasn't a mastermind. It was a training weekend in a fancy location, essentially, right?
Yes.
Which was nice, but it wasn't a mastermind like this. And so when I think about putting that on, I'm like, that's just so much content. Like, ugh, I don't like that. Just seems overwhelming. And I know for myself, like that's always, yeah, cool, but it's the actual masterminding that always jazzes me up and that I love and that I wanted to actually replicate if we were to actually host one of these ourselves. So you've got my juices all flowing because I'm like, okay, now this I could totally do.
I think the last mastermind that, quote mastermind that we went to was like 3 days of in-person webinars where we got pitched on something at the end of every call, of every speaker. And it was right. It was the discussions in between that we really found valuable, because all the information that we're getting during the training or the speakers, it's stuff that we already knew, but it was networking and meeting new people and seeing, and asking them what they were doing in their business. It was all the stuff that we probably could have done without, if we had just went there without the speakers, we probably would have gotten 10 times more out of it.
Well, it's funny you say that because I have been to this sort of event where they basically just herded a bunch of entrepreneurs together next to a buffet for a weekend. And that is just the chatting. And that's okay. But I spent most of my time thinking, but what about me? I have so many questions. Or I have so many questions about your business. So it breaks up into effectively what we're talking about, hot seats, but in little tiny groups. And that feeling of I'm at a party where I'm kind of at work at the same time. So I've seen the, oh, stop teaching me stuff, I need to think about it type. And I've been to the, is this just some incredibly expensive cheese and wine event I'm at? And I think where you go and mastermind is the key, because that's where the money is. That's where you unlock stuff for yourself. And watching other people go through that process is so powerful.
Sure.
I, as you can tell, I'm an evangelist. Do it. I think you should run one.
So as far as, the in-person and even the virtual ones as well, are they geared towards a very specific goal, or is this more just like, for example, like writing a book? Like this mastermind is going to be about publishing your books to build your business, or or is it just more of a general thing? Like how do we, build our businesses and grow faster and generate revenue, whatever, whatever the method may be.
So I would say that even if you do the second sort, you have to have a clear goal per person. So I'm a business growth strategist. So my masterminds, everybody has their own strategy to build. And then we are both discussing and ideating that through the year, but also making sure people hit that.
Okay.
The really high end ones where people are getting speed to goal as well. So what they're paying for is, instead of spending 6 months getting this information, they're getting it in a weekend. For those people, your goal needs to be ever tighter. The clearer it is, because if you're going to shell out 20 grand for something, you want to be pretty clear that on Monday, you have a list of things that you are going to do. So I would encourage you to make it as tight as possible. I've seen masterminds and I've helped build masterminds around things like dealing with toxic culture in companies that have grown really quickly, the sort that have sudden growth. And the first session, the first weekend is about, the fish rots from the head. We think it's a toxic culture with them. It's actually you, the CEO, that is dealing with it. Let's start with that. We got to do some inner work. The second weekend is about, okay, now you're in a good space. You've had 6 months to think about it. Now we're moving on to how do we move that through to the people below us. So as long as you're really clear on your outcomes, you know where you are with it. So I would really encourage you to be as specific as possible.
I love that. The whole concept really works, and just it's all kinds of things are clicking for me right now. The one thing that I think about, and maybe it's because I haven't been involved in one of these types of live true mastermind events, is that a lot of times the things that take a long time when people are doing something big, whether that's like outlining their book or like creating their offer or like whatever that thing is that it would be geared around, it's the decision time that people take forever to like decide this is the direction that I want to go in when they've got a lot of options. Do you feel like the mastermind environment has been is a catalyst to help them to make decisions quicker and to move things forward?
It can be, but if you know that is going to be a problem, if you want them to have made decisions before the weekend and then to move forwards on, say, structure of whatever it is on the weekend, I would suggest you send them pre-work and you have a couple of calls beforehand. So one is maybe a sort of meet and greet, and the second one is, right, so you've had your homework and do it, so that everyone can hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. Because we all know we kind of skip the big thinking. So if they can at least have looked at stuff, and we also know that if we send people things, they don't look at it till 30 seconds before the call. So you want to prep people as much as possible. And likewise, once they've got their plan or their thinking at the end of the session, you probably want to have an online call of everyone together, or one-to-ones with people. You could go either way. If you think your people are so busy that they're not going to be able to make a group call, then one-to-one coaching, just a tiny bit of one-to-one coaching before the big event. And again, if they're paying a delightfully large amount of money, then that's fine. Nobody minds.
I love it. I love it. So do you have any thoughts on, or I don't know if this is part of your wheelhouse, but the whole sales process to sell into the masterminds?
Yes, absolutely. So you just need to, as with all sales, you just need to paint the picture really clearly. You need to be clear about your outcomes. You need to be clear about the pain. It's all the usual sales point. In fact, actually, this is one of my pet peeves about most mastermind training. It isn't actually on how to run a mastermind. It's on how to sell a mastermind. And to be honest, you sell a mastermind the same way you sell everything else. It is just be really clear and also really excited about it, because this is such a special thing. There are very few times where you can get space to think, this is what you're giving people. And you're giving them with a curated group of people who are at the same level as them. It's a really special thing. And that just needs to come across in your sales. You know how to sell. Very clearly, you know how to sell. So I don't think it's anything special.
So after you finish your first mastermind, how many of the people typically roll over into the next one? Like, because you probably do another one after that. Do most of the people roll over into the next one, or do you try to get all new people for the next one?
I certainly don't try and get all new people, because one of the joys of masterminds is that people get results, and you, as the owner of the mastermind, don't have to find as many clients, which is lovely because they're there. So I have both an opening process and a closing process that really reminds people of how far they've come. Particularly the closing is all about, how humans in particular, but entrepreneurs most of all, we just remember all the things we haven't done. We forget all the things that we have achieved. So my closing process is really about reminding people how far we've come. I used to not do this, and I would get maybe 20 or 30% of people would renew. Now I have this process that reminds people, remember those 10 things you were going to do? Well, you did 8 of them. Isn't that great? And now I would say 60 to 70% retention, sometimes more. It depends on the group. But that's lovely. I'd say that's delightful. And the big thing I do in that final session, it's going to sound really weird and might sound a bit touchy-feely, but I ask people to share with the other members one at a time, like in a hot seat, what they have really appreciated about the other person, each one. And it is so weird and squirmy if you're in the hot seat while people are being nice about you, because we're not really socialized to just sit still while people, and I'm Irish and I've got an English accent, but I'm Irish. The Irish are not trained to just accept compliments. So we sit there and we say nice things. And what is fascinating is that often the things that are most helpful and moving for the other people in the group are not the things you think they'll be. They're tiny things. They might be, we know you've had a really tough year, but you have shown up every week and we really appreciate that. Or you told me this random thing over coffee and it's stuck in my mind and I've run with that and it's been really helpful. It's those little moments. And by creating a space where people are forced to like each other, they leave on this lovely high. Look at what I have achieved and look at the group I have done it. So even if they don't continue, instead of sort of going out with a whimper, we go out with this lovely, clear memory of this is what we achieved this year. And it's very powerful.
That's awesome. So on the live events, at the end of the event, are you taking like video testimonials of their experience or anything like that while you have them physically in front of you?
Yes, I've done that. I have to say that can be a bit weird. I've been at lots of events where they make you go and stand in a video. Where I get my absolute best testimonials is at that point where everyone has said nice things about each other. They will naturally say, can we say nice things about you? Go on then. And like I said, I was raised by the English, but I'm Irish, right? So it is as squirmy and weird for me as for everybody else. And people at that point are connected to their best selves. They're remembering all of the good things. So I have some of the best testimonials I've ever seen because they come from those 2 or 3 minutes where people are thinking, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever done. And they will tell you. So yes, but you will actually, I find I get even better testimonials when we're in a Zoom session, which is weird, but it works.
Interesting. So, and then in those live events, are you selling at the end of the event for the next round, for the next live?
I mention it, but I think it's actually ethically dubious when you have sort of lashed people up into this lather of excitement and love about the whole group to then sort of move straight into, so while you're here. So what I like to do is just say, as you know, there's another thing coming. So often before the last session, I have already made it clear that there is another offer there and it is up to them, because the space that you have created is so intense. I feel it kind of takes away from it if you go straight into sales. So I will follow up afterwards. Did you get what you wanted? As you know, the space is available, but I will do it after the event. And I've had very good feedback from clients that it doesn't end up as a big kind of pitch fest. We've all been in those pitch fests.
Yeah.
And you just can't get away fast enough, can you?
And then you feel like, oh, well, yeah. I think it can lend to that scenario that we've all experienced where you paid for this experience. And while it was maybe good, it ends you leaving feeling like, well, but I didn't get everything because I didn't buy that next thing that they pitched in the
Yes,
end.
exactly. Exactly. And also, like, have I just paid 10 grand for you to sell me things? Just stop it. Yes. So I like to keep it clean. I like people to know that there is something they can buy, but this thing is a complete experience in itself.
And
I think it improves your reliability and it's ethical as well.
You know, a lot of our audience, coaches, course creators, they've got, different digital products and ways that they help and serve people. So how do you see this fitting in sort of like their value ladder or in their, the things that they're offering?
Sure. So for me, a mastermind is a really high end thing. It comes above coaching. So you might go freebie, course, one-to-one coaching into a mastermind. But I know a lot of people, when they come to me, they're thinking of their mastermind as the step down from one-to-one work. And I would encourage you to go the other way with that, because it's not it's a group, therefore it's cheaper. It's like, it's a group. You get 4 people and a coach. How fantastic is that? So it's a step up. And I know people that have the normal mastermind and then the special mastermind above that. So it keeps moving up. And again, I think if you think of it in terms of the course or the one-to-one coaching is where you get untangled and clear, and the mastermind is where you get the big ideation. Now you're ready for the next, like, support over a long period. And they are just delightful, because once you filled them, unlike other programs, you just have to turn up, because you don't know the questions that people are going to ask. So as long as you are, fully dressed and ready to answer questions, you are good to go. As you can tell, I love them. They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that, for the people that we know that run these, is like the masterminds generate half of their entire revenue for their business, even though their mastermind is only like 35 people. They make thousands of sales of courses and their group coaching and their one-on-one coaching, but half of their revenue comes from just the mastermind, from a small group of people, because of that high ticket sale that you're making, and just the people renewing year after year when they do it, because they're getting so much value.
Absolutely. And also, they are your greatest fans because they're renewing, because they're getting results, because they're there. They are also a little test nodule of I find that I test copy. I'll just drop it into sentences. And if I see a room full of people go, ooh, I'm like, okay, well, that one worked. I shall use that again. But they're also your greatest fans. They will be proselytizing for you. They are just brilliant, and they're fun to do, and lovely revenue as well. And the clients get amazing results. What's not to love?
So for your clients, I want to hear, like, what are your proudest moments and biggest successes that you've helped to create?
Well, some of the masterminds I've run are still running. People that I started training people 10 years ago, those masterminds are still running. That is delightful. So obviously it is a transmittable skill, which is lovely. But I think the very nicest thing any client ever said to me was, I had a client who was a copywriter who wasn't really making that much cash when she came to me. Most of my clients in my online masterminds are a smaller business, maybe micro businesses. So she wasn't making 100K. So in the first year, we got her up to 100K. The second year, she made the same amount of money, but in 2 days a week. So she went fabulously well. And then the year after, we did very well for her, because we built all the structures, we'd moved in the right direction. And she said to me, I don't know which bit of the mastermind did this, but the internet has basically backed the money truck up to my business. And I know it happened in the mastermind. That is superb.
That is awesome. I love that. That's a great visual. Great visual. So Wonderful. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Liz. I think people have taken buckets of notes and find so much value in this. If they want to connect with you or learn more about you, where should they head?
Well, I've made your people a special page on my website. So if they go to rethinkcentral.com/trailblazers, they can find some freebies about masterminds and they can choose to join my list, because I know this is probably a bad marketing plan, but you can get the freebies without opting in, because in my world, I want people on my list who really want to be on my list. And I also think everybody should know about masterminds. So if you go there, there are some videos, there are some PDFs, there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it's all there.
Wonderful. That's awesome. So we'll have all of that in the show notes and description. We really appreciate you, Liz. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.